Our passage this morning comes from Matthew chapter 11, verses 2 through 19. Hear now these words. When John heard in prison what the Messiah was doing, he sent word by his disciples, and he said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" Jesus answered them, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, and the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me." And as they went away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds about John. "What did you go out in the wilderness to look at? A reed shaken by the wind? What then did you go out to see? Someone dressed in soft robes? Look, those who wear soft robes are in royal palaces. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, 'See, I am sending my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way before you.' Truly, I tell you, among those born of women, no one has arisen greater than John the Baptist, yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. For the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence, and the violent take it by force. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John came, and if you are willing to accept it, he is Elijah who is to come. Let anyone with ears listen. But to what will I compare this generation? It is like children sitting in the marketplace and calling to one another, 'We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We wailed, and you did not mourn.' For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he is a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, 'Look, a glutton and a drunkard, and a friend of tax collectors and sinners.' Yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds." This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God.
An X-ray eye seldom sees externals. People who want to read the inner life of humanity often seem to have very little interest in the furniture of life. That's what makes Jesus, the way he saw things, so unusual. Eager to plumb the deepest vaults of the human heart, yes, but he never missed kind of the daily details of life. Maybe Jesus understood that the extraordinary is often hidden in the ordinary. Listen to his turn of phrases. His phrases are loaded with the sights and the colors and the sounds of daily occurrences. The strength of the yeast that the housewife needs into the dough for daily bread. The way a shepherd is with his sheep. The way a almost reckless farmer throws out his seeds with holy abandon on good soil and bad soil, even whistling at the birds. All these daily details, they were absorbed by the attentiveness of Jesus, and they became a springboard for his teachings, his parables. There's a little parable that got tucked into this morning's rather complex reading. I have to think that this came out of Jesus paying attention to something that he saw quite regularly. A bunch of children in Palestine. Where did they play? They played in the marketplace in the village square. That was their playground. That's where they played out their games. And you know the first question for children at play: what do you want to do? What are we going to do today? Well, there were some initiators. There were some proposers in the group. And they said, oh, let's do this. Let's play wedding. We can go and get some of our best parents' robes and dress up in them and have a nice little ceremony. And then after that, we can play like we're having a feast and pretend that we're going to be dancing, just having a good time like we've seen our parents. The reactors in the group said, no way, not today. We're not into wedding. But the proposers, you've got to hand it to them. They were flexible, they were adaptive, and they said, we're just going to play into where you are. How about funeral? Yes, we can go back to our houses and we get our parents' darkest robes, and we've seen them have those processions, those sad processions, the weeping, the wailing. Oh, but the reactors, the same ones that said no wedding, said not for us, not today, no funeral. So the proposers look across at their friends and say, whoa, goodness, what's wrong with you? We played the pipes and flutes, and you would not dance. We wailed, and you would not weep. Okay. This little parable is tucked in one of the sad kind of moments in Jesus' ministry. You remember how it began. Oh, they came from every hole and hovel in Palestine. They came around him with energy and enthusiasm, hanging on every word. But now, well, the movement's been at it for a while, and now there is this growing carping, criticism. There's even this rather painful message that comes from John the Baptist. John the Baptist is now imprisoned by Herod, and he sends one of his messengers to Jesus. And look, this is the question he puts before Jesus. He said, are you the one? Are you the one? Or should we still be waiting for another? Okay. John and Jesus, they were different in theological styles. John's followers were still fasting and praying and following his strict line of repentance. And people did say, oh, that's way too stern. And here came Jesus and his followers, and well, their faith was a singing faith, a melody of mercies. There was the eating and the feasting. And people said, oh, way too lighthearted. And Jesus said, how are we ever going to make some of you happy? But I think there's a fuller sadness to some of this. It wasn't just a difference between Jesus and John and comparisons. Aren't we discovering here that it's easier to believe in a Messiah that is still to come than it is to believe in Messiah who's already come? The Messiah is coming, the Messiah is coming. As long as it's still out there, well, all of our particular hopes and expectations are alive and well. But once the Messiah comes, well, that's done. He says this and not that. He is this way and not that way. He's not just anyone, he's someone. And in that day, oh, they had their popular expectations of the Messiah. Number one, royalty. Oh, that he would be like King David, military hero. Number two, high steeple kind of preacher, priestly leadership like Aaron. Jesus, Messiah, an itinerant, storyteller, healer, someone who ate with the tax collectors and the outcast. Some of you remember some years back, Colin Powell was thinking about running for president. And he hadn't decided, Democrat, Republican, hadn't decided. So there was this cartoon, and it pictured Colin Powell standing on a well-lit stage, and to his left, the Democrat, to his left, this Republican figure. And if you look carefully, there were not three shadows cast on the stage, but only two. Why? Because Colin Powell, he had not yet decided. His identity had not yet finally emerged, okay? Jesus had been at it a while. He had now cast a shadow. In fact, his problem was not that he cast no shadow. His problem was he cast so many shadows. Jesus, the ethical exemplar. Jesus, the social transformer. Jesus, the peacemaker. Jesus, the rabble-rouser. Jesus, the one who comforted the afflicted. Jesus, the one who afflicted the comfortable. So people had their little bit of expectation of Messiah, and they just started trying to pound him in to their hopes. Jesus, no, he remained free, following the full range of his call. You know, it was about as hard to nail Jesus down as Jell-O. Okay. I hope by this time you realize I'm not just talking about something that happened among believers and Christian followers way back then. No. It's still at work. this tendency we have to want to domesticate Jesus. We want to whittle Jesus down to the size of our propensities and our proclivities. Will Willimon, some years ago, went to the Crystal Cathedral in California, outside of Los Angeles. And if you've ever been there, I haven't, but I've been told, at least at that point, there were no signs of any cross in that gathering, because the leaders of the church said, we don't want something that demanding. That it just seems too harsh. So when Willimon and his family got there, they looked at the bulletin, and they were going to have a guest preacher. It was Charles Colson. Remember Charles Colson of Watergate fame? Now a teacher, preacher. So Colson gets up, and he turned to a rather nice, full congregation, and he tells them how glad he is to be there. He feels privileged to be preaching in a place of such energy and such outright beauty. And then he said, yesterday I spent the day in the Los Angeles prison camp among murderers and felons. And then he went on and he said, I think if Jesus were here today with us, with you, he would be glad to be here. But if you ask Jesus, he said, Jesus, you have a choice. Crystal Cathedral, Los Angeles prison camp. Which do you think he would choose? And then Willimon said, Colson went on for the next 20 minutes just peeling back the bark, just pushing that church on their boundaries. At the end of the service, Willimon walks out and he shakes Colson's hand and he says, I'm glad you had your first opportunity to preach at the Crystal Cathedral. It will probably be your last. So Willimon says he ran into Colson 2 years later, and Colson said it was. It was. Okay. Now, the church, we've always been at our best when we resist the sin of trying to pound Jesus through the knothole of our little bit of experience and expectation. See, we are at our best when we are willing to encounter the full range of his rich, free, majestic, wild otherness. Okay. Then, you see, things go beyond our plans, and there'll be some surprises along the way. Unexpected people will show up and say unexpected things, and we will find Jesus as the Lord, not just of our dancing, but also our wailing, the one who will speak to our crucifixions as well as our resurrections. Are you the one? Are you the one? Came the question to Jesus. Or should we still wait? And Jesus didn't answer the question. It's going to be up to us, you see, Who do we say that he is? The Messiah among us as still just a dream, or it's a dream that has already come true? Well, there's some sadness in this parable and this teaching. I'm going to shift us just for a moment, put our feet on a different kind of path, because there could be another kind of sadness in this little parable. It's the sadness of chronic dissatisfaction, that just takes up residence in the human spirit. We played the pipes for you. We did everything. We played the pipes for you and you would not dance. Oh, and then we wailed and you wouldn't mourn. See? Just never really happy with anything. I heard John Claypool one day say, look, this is rooted not just in a sour disposition. He says, I think it can go all the way back to how we interpret the first thing God ever did for us and for creation. How we interpret that. How does Genesis interpret that? Genesis said God, with no real ulterior motive, God not trying to get something, just wants to give something. God says this aliveness in me is too great to keep to myself, so God widens the circle of joy all the way to you, all the way to me, and then God evaluates and sums it up with this exuberant phrase. It's good. Oh, it's beyond good. This is very, very, very good. Oh, but then there's an interesting character gets into the account. It's a serpent. And the serpent sows these little seeds of discontent, saying, do you mean the Creator told you you couldn't eat all the fruit in the garden? Well, he said we could eat all of it except this one tree. Oh, says the serpent, that old shyster. Don't you see? He's trying to put you down and keep you in his place. And what does Genesis say in the account? That our forebears put more trust in the word of a serpent than in the word of God, and they came to see the world as a conspiracy rather than a gracious creation. If they trusted in the goodness of God, they maybe would have said, we really don't want to be gods. It's more than enough just to be us, to have been made human. But now we have this chronic dissatisfaction that plays down through the years, dissatisfied with the body, the minds we've been given, our circumstances, places we've been placed. Maybe put it more simply, just discontent with our humanness, our limitations. And once you start there, my goodness, everything you get to will be perceived negatively. In contemporary psychological terms, what I'm talking about is neurotic negativism. Karen Horney's done a lot of research in this area, and she makes a basic distinction between two words we often confuse, psychotic and neurotic. Karen Horney says, a psychotic person is one who says 2 plus 2 equals 5. See, out of touch with reality. A neurotic person says 2 plus 2 equals 4, but says, I don't like it. You see, you're in touch with reality, but not pleased about it. Realistic to be sure, but very disgruntled. Classic story, comes out of England. Young family, they go to have a picnic, beautiful lakeside scene. Mom and Dad get too involved in getting all the picnics set up, and a little 3-year-old boy gets away from them and falls in the water at the edge of the lake. The little 3-year-old boy doesn't know how to swim. His parents don't know how to swim. There is a lot of calling out. There's some hysteria. There's some crying out, help, help. A man walking along sees the scene and at some risk dives into the lake. Right before the child bobs down for the 3rd time, he grabs him, pulls him up, safely brings him ashore. And as he puts the little boy safely before his parents, the mother says to the rescuer testily, well, where is Johnny's cap? Okay. Now, friends, that's classic neurotic negativism. Where's Johnny's cap? That's the bad news. Here's the good news. The one who tells us this story about the petulant children is the very one who has the power to heal our discontent. Okay. What did John Killinger say? Jesus is God's way of getting rid of a bad reputation. Okay. God so loved the world, he sent us Jesus to say that our place in the universe is very good. To show us that no matter what our sampling of life, that to be here, to have the immense joy and the immense job of being a member of the human race in which God himself is incarnate is a very, very good thing. So from the very beginning, God's not putting us in our place. God is giving us a life that's infinite, rich, large, contradictory, the life of being a free human being, and that's good. I have a lot of hopes when I come in here to worship on Sunday. I'm sure you bring some of your hopes with you. But I think just about any Sunday, one of my hopes would be that as a congregation, we'll be willing to engage the full range of the wild and wondrous shadows that Jesus cast in this world. that we'll be open to all of that. If so, then you see some unexpected things are going to happen here. The worship will go beyond my plans and your plans. And who knows, maybe on some Sunday we'll find the healing of our memories taking place. Because when Jesus is here with us, full range Jesus, you see, this is one who is not bound by time any more than space. This is one who can go back with us down the corridors of our days, stopping at any of those wounded, stopping at any of those hurtful places. And right in those hurtful places, we can be as healed as clearly as the maimed and the blind were healed during Jesus' earthly ministry. Who knows? Some Sunday, He may take us all the way back to the first thing that ever happened to us, our birth. And help us see like never before. Oh, this is good. This is very, very, very good. Well, I have hopes for this table today. There's going to be one that I believe is going to be meeting us here, and my hope is that somewhere, somehow in this meal, He will find us, and something of His very life will fill our emptiness, dispel our darkness and our discontent.